Hello friends, today we'll be dealing with two chapters of Economic Survey of India, chapter 7 and chapter 8. Chapter 7 is a very important chapter. It is dealing with regulatory forbearance of RBI towards banking sector during crisis period. For example, in 2008, when the global financial crisis occurred, some forbearance was provided to the banks. Something similar is happening right now because of COVID-19 crisis. You would see, perhaps you would remember that in 2020, RBI had relaxed a lot of conditions for banks when this COVID crisis had stuck. Okay, so this chapter is basically focused upon, were these regulatory forbearance good for the functioning of banking sector in GFC after global financial crisis, or basically the aim of this chapter is to learn from the regulatory forbearance that was provided in the 2008 GFC to ensure that the current regulatory forbearance is achieving the goals that it is trying to achieve. So I have used, I'll explain all these things in a very simple way, but first, what is meant by forbearance? Tolerance, regulatory tolerance or regulatory relaxation. So what is forbearance at very basic level? It is relaxation of norms, certain norms which banks have to follow. Let's say, in this case, forbearance that we are specifically speaking about, before we get into forbearance, do we all understand what NPAs are? Do we all understand this? Non-performing assets? Okay, basically, if I take a loan from bank, if I have taken bank and bank has given me 1 lakh rupees of loan, is it an asset of bank? If bank has given me loan of 1 lakh rupees to Santosh, is it asset for the bank? Yes, it's asset because it's something from which bank is earning. It's earning interest by giving loan to me. It's an asset for the bank. But suppose my financial condition deteriorates and I'm not paying interest and EMI back, then this becomes non-performing asset. It is an asset which has become non-performing. Why non-performing? The purpose of the asset should be earn me profit. That is what asset should do. But here it has become non-performing. So RBI has listed a set of criteria based on which a loan becomes non-performing. For example, if I have taken a loan and continuously for 90 days, I have not been able to pay the EMI, pay the interest, then that asset may become loan. If you have credit card and your credit card, you have used credit card and 3 months have passed from the first day on which you are supposed to pay back the bank, after 3 months, the loan that you took in the by credit also becomes a non-performing asset. For agricultural loan system is a bit different. Here our focus is not on NPA. Like right after Economic Survey of India, we'll be jumping onto full-fledged economy. There we'll study NPA in detail. But briefly, let's understand. For agriculture, for a short-term crop, a crop which takes less than 1 year, the loan becomes non-performing if it is not paid for 1 crop cycle. For a long-term crop, whatever. So the period after which the loan becomes non-performing varies, but in general it is 90 days. This loan is becoming non-performing asset. Did you understand this? What is non-performing asset? Pakka? Okay. Now, there is another concept that you should briefly know to understand whatever we'll be covering in this section. That is known as capital adequacy ratio, or it's also known as capital to risk weighted asset ratio. Capital adequacy ratio or capital to risk weighted asset ratio. Do we understand what is capital adequacy ratio? Now, to understand capital adequacy ratio, understand this basic thing. Suppose I want to start a bank today and I'm starting with an initial capital of 1 CR. Suppose I want to start a bank today and I'm starting with an initial capital of 1 CR. I've started the bank, I'm taking deposits and I'm giving loans. This is what I'm doing. I'm taking deposits and I'm giving loans. Will I be allowed to give loan in 1 CR of capital? Will I be allowed to give loan of 1000 crore rupees? Or should I be allowed? No. Like, see, I may have a deposit of 1000 crore rupees. People may have deposited 1000 crore rupees in my bank, and thus I have money to give 1000 in loan to the second party. But should I be allowed to do that? No. Because the capital that I have is only 1 CR. So in case one of this person who has taken a loan of 10 crore is not able to return it, my capital will not be able to compensate for it. It will be the depositors who will be in trouble. And thus, how much is your asset loan is a multiple of what is your capital. What is CAR? Capital adequacy ratio or capital to risk weighted asset ratio. Generally, let's say right now if the requirement is of 10%, so if my capital is 1 CR, then my asset can be 10 CR. Loan can be up to 10 CR. Did you understand this? Pakka? So even if people are depositing a lot of money in my bank, I cannot risk their money unless I have some backup at my end. Right? This also we'll study in more detail when we'll study banking sector and Basel norms. Each and every of these terms, like for people who are in PMP must have already studied Basel norms and all, you have studied. So for people who are only part of current affairs program, we will be thoroughly doing it. There we'll understand these concepts in slightly more detail. Fine. You understood everything till here? Now suppose capital adequacy ratio is of 10%. That is, आप जितना भी asset दे रहे हो, जितना भी loan दे रहे हो, उसका 10% capital you should have. So if my capital is 1 crore, the loan maximum that I can give is 10 crore rupees. Then capital to risk weighted asset ratio. Let's understand this. Here, capital to asset ratio, you have understood what is capital to asset. But see, when I'm giving loan, 1 crore, suppose I have given to Government of India, 1 crore I have given to Vijay Mallya, and 1 crore I have given to, or remaining 7 crore I have given to a business which is doing well. In this scenario, the risk of the loan that has been given to Vijay Mallya is high. Risk to the loan which has been given to government is not there. There is no risk at all. So basically, when we measure capital to risk weighted asset ratio, we weight the asset with the risk. So if a loan becomes bad loan, or if a loan becomes such that the person is not paying it back, it has become bad loan and the risk associated with that loan has increased. तो उसका जो weight होगा in the risk weighted asset will be higher. So if you are giving loan to government, for that you will not have to keep a lot of capital. But if you are giving loan to some unstable entity, at that time you will have to keep more capital with you, because capital to risk weight. So when we call capital adequacy ratio or capital, these are these two are same things. Capital to risk weighted asset ratio is exactly the same thing. Asset is measured in risk weighted form. Asset is not measured just in the quantity 1 crore, 1 crore, 1 crore, 1 crore. No, 1 crore government. Oh, don't worry about this. 1 crore to Vijay Mallya, worry about it. Consider it 2 crore. 100% और weight बढ़ा दो उसका. Right? Oh, you have given this loan to Levelup. Levelup will be able to give a return loan on time. But let's keep a risk of 20% with them. You understand? You're understanding? So 1 CR का loan है तो risk weighted asset में it may be mentioned as 1.2 CR. Right? These fundamental things, are you able to understand? Sure, Priyanka? Now, suppose this is the situation. Now, let me simplify things. The capital to risk weighted asset ratio, maybe in Basel 1, the norm was something else, in Basel 2 norm was something else, in Basel 3 norm is something else. I'm not talking right now. For simplification, for our understanding purpose, let us consider it to be 10%. That is, if my capital is 1 CR, my asset can be of, risk weighted asset can be of 10 CR. My risk weighted asset can be of 10 CR. Right now, let's assume this is the, for our understanding purpose, capital to risk weighted asset ratio is 10%. Fine. Now, let's understand this. Suppose one of this loan, 1 CR, 1 CR, 1 CR, ऐसे there are 10 such loans. 10 crore का total loan है. One of this loan becomes NPA, or one of this loan becomes such that the company is not able to, the organization which took the loan is not able to pay it back. Is not able to pay it back. Risk weight on this would increase. Risk weight on this would increase. But if your CAR is exactly 1:10 right now, if its risk weight increases, what happens? In that scenario, you will have to provide more provisions. You will have to either increase the capital, only then this would be sustainable, this would be allowed, itna loan would be allowed. Or when the loan becomes risky, you have to add some extra provisions. Right? This also you understood. Suppose this year you earn profit of, suppose this year you, one scenario that is clear, if NPA increases, if some loan becomes bad loan, then risk weight increases, and thus the capital requirement would go up. This you have understood? Because the loan, risk weighted loan will no more remain 10 CR, it may become 10.2 CR because of the risk involved with one of the loans. अच्छा उसका है, किसका कॉल है? अननोन, मुझे नहीं आता अननोन नंबर से कॉल. उठाओ, तुम बंद कर रहे हो. कहाँ थे? हाँ, 1 point, our capital has to increase. That is one scenario if the one of the loans has become problematic. Suppose I earned a profit of 2 CR this year. That is from the loan that I gave, interest I got, I earned a profit of 2 CR. Depositors को उनका interest वापस देने के बाद भी I earned the profit of 2 CR. Then when I'm earning the profit of 2 CR, the option that I have available is वो 2 CR में कंपनी से निकाल के इन्वेस्टर्स को दे दूं, जिन्होंने भी कंपनी में पैसा 1 CR जो पैसा लगाया था. See, this is your profit, this is your dividend. One option I have is this. Second option is I would say, oh, profit is of 2 CR. Let us invest 1 CR as capital. 1 CR give to investors, the shareholders of the company. 1 CR as capital. So I can increase the capital in this manner and thus increase the total risk weighted asset amount. Right? These fundamental concepts should be clear to us before we get into forbearance and all these issues. Okay. If there is any doubt whatsoever, ask it right now. I'm telling you, we'll study all these things in a lot of details. For those of you who have studied with me in past would know that banking is one area which we, like after agriculture, it is banking that we study the most. So banking will cover thoroughly, but these concepts should be clear to understand this chapter of Economic Survey of India, and that's why I first wanted to cover this. Okay. Now, what is regulatory forbearance? For that, before we get into regulatory forbearance, let us understand some other terms. One is called restructuring of loans. The term called restructuring. Do we understand what restructuring is? Do you understand it, Ravi? What is restructuring? Restructuring basically means right now I may have taken loan of 1 CR and I have to give 1 lakh rupees of EMI every month. But my business is not doing well. So I cannot pay 1 CR every month for next 20 years. The bank will restructure the loan and will make it 80,000 every month for next 30 years. Amount per month that has to be paid they have reduced. The duration for which the amount would be paid has increased, so that it becomes simple. The loan has been restructured. It becomes simple for me to give the loan back. This is restructuring of the loan. Duration of the loan is increased. The EMI that has to be paid is reduced so that it becomes easier for me. This is restructuring of loan. So sometimes banks do this. When I'm not able to pay my loan back, banks restructure my loan. Without any forbearance, regulatory forbearance, when restructuring of the loan occur, please note, if I was not able to pay 1 lakh rupees a month, there would be slight risk in the fact that I'll be able to pay 80,000 also. Right? There would be risk involved there. So this loan of 1 CR that I have taken is now associated with higher risk because I was not able to pay 1 lakh rupees. Is now associated with higher risk because I was not able to pay 1 CR, 1 lakh rupees per month. So though restructuring happens, bank has restructured the loan, but bank will have to provide for more provisions to deal with the more risk. Because if I was not able to pay 1 lakh rupees per month, it means paying 80,000 rupees per month will also be more riskier. Will also be riskier, and thus risk associated with my loan should increase. And thus capital adequacy ratio mein my capital should be slightly higher to reach the target of 10%. Okay, let me suppose all these loans 1 CR, 1 CR, 1 CR. Now this loan of 1 CR, the bank has restructured. Earlier I had to pay 1 lakh rupees per month. Now I'll have to pay 80,000 rupees per month for longer period. But bank will say its risk has increased. RBI would say its risk is higher. And thus the capital that you have right now is not good enough for the risk. You increase the capital to ensure that capital to risk weighted asset ratio is maintained. Fine. Did you understand this? So banks will have to increase their capital, or if their capital is good enough already they were at a ratio of 8%, they can go up to 10%. Oh, sorry, if they were at a ratio of 12%, they can go up to 10 because the target is 10%, the limit is 10%. So they can take care of that in that manner. Okay, did you understand restructuring? So restructuring generally is associated with worsening of the rating of the asset and thus more provisioning by bank. Bank will have to provide more provisions to ensure that risk is compensated for. I have put some more capital to ensure that happens. That is restructuring of loans. But during crisis period, for example 2008 crisis or 2020 COVID-19 crisis, RBI gives forbearance, tolerance. Achha, you're restructuring loan. Okay, restructure it, but you do not have to provide for extra provisions. It will not be considered NPA. Earlier, when you were restructuring loan, it was considered NPA. It became NPA. Now you provide more capital associated with this. But forbearance, tolerance means RBI would say, okay, do not worry, bank, you don't worry, you restructure the loan. See, financial situation is bad. So there may be very good chance that because of financial crisis, the business is not doing well, and as financial situation improves, business would start doing well and they'll be able to pay back the loan. So there's no point of calling them non-performing asset. This is forbearance, tolerance to this thing. In the absence of forbearance, the restructured loan would have been considered NPA, but when forbearance, regulatory forbearance is provided by RBI, the restructured loan is considered non-NPA. And thus extra capital or extra provisions for that does not have to be provided. Fine. So let us look at the definition. Regulatory forbearance for banks involved relaxing the norms for restructuring of assets. Restructuring of assets का जो norm है, that is, norm is once the asset is restructured, it will be considered a non-performing asset. It will be, you'll have to provide some more, its risk would be higher, you'll have to provide some more capital. But all these things are relaxed, where restructured assets were no longer required to be classified as NPAs and therefore did not require the levels of provisioning that NPAs attract. Got it? Did you understand the term forbearance? Sure. This chapter would be slightly difficult. I'll make it very easy for you people to understand, but understand each and everything. If you have any doubt, let me know. See, in the remaining chapters of Economic Survey of India, I have not insisted so much on asking doubts, but on this, ask doubts because everything is connected. Priyanka, clear? Okay. Now, so during the global financial crisis 2008, during the COVID-19 crisis, all over the world, central banks provided some regulatory forbearance to banks. India was no exception. RBI also provided regulatory forbearance. The idea was that during difficult times, it will help borrowers. People who have taken loans, it will help them. Unnecessary converting their loans into non-performing asset and all should not be good. It will also help banks to provide more resources to the economy. Because if that asset is not converted into NPA, restructured loan is not considered NPA, the bank will not have to provide for extra provision. Thus, bank will be able to provide more loan to the economy. So it helps individual businesses. The focus is on that banks would also be able to give more loans if forbearance is there. If forbearance was not there, then bank will have to keep some money for provisioning purpose, but that will not be required because here, because of forbearance, the restructured loan is not considered NPA. NPA होने पे देखो, फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल एनपीए होने पे, अच्छा बोरोवर पे कुछ इफेक्ट नहीं पड़ता, उसका क्रेडिट रेटिंग खराब हो जाएगा. तो उसको सो रवि आस्क्ड अ क्वेश्चन, सर इफ अ लोन बिकम्स एनपीए, सपोज आई हैव टेकन अ लोन ऑफ 1 CR क्या करूंगा, 5 lakhs. सपोज 5 लाख का कोई यूज है क्या? So suppose I've taken a loan of 5 lakh rupees and I'm not able to pay it back on time. My credit rating would go down. So when I ask for loans in future, the interest rate that may be charged from me would be higher because my credit rating would be lower. Then banks can also start taking steps to recover the loan from me when the loan becomes NPA. Okay, but forbearance, why forbearance is provided during crisis period is understood. Now, you people have these notes, right? Here we want to understand that if a loan has to be restructured, or if a loan becomes stressed asset, that is, loan is not being paid in a timely manner, EMIs is not being paid in a timely manner. In that situation, without forbearance, what are the options available with bank, and what would it do? With forbearance, that is when central banks have given forbearance, what are the options available with the bank and what it will do? So first is without forbearance. Here, if the project, suppose I've taken a loan for Levelup IAS, I've taken a loan of 10 lakh rupees. Let's say this is the scenario. Now I'm not, that loan becomes stressed asset. मेरे students fees देते ही नहीं है. That loan became stressed asset situation. What are the options available for bank without forbearance, when forbearance is not going on? At that time, if the project is viable, the bank would restructure the asset. Please note, I took loan of 10 lakh rupees. I was supposed to pay 1 lakh rupees every month for next 12 months. I took loan of 10 lakh rupees. I was supposed to pay 1 lakh rupees every month for next 12 months. Interest भी लगेगा ना थोड़ा सा. तो 10 lakh की जगह 12 lakh मैं वापस कर रहा हूँ. But suppose I'm not able to return 1 lakh rupees back every month. They will restructure the loan. If the project is, if they look, okay, Levelup IAS, this project, this program is viable, then there is no point of stopping their work. Let us restructure the loan. So they'll restructure the loan, they'll make it of 24 months and 50,000 rupees a month. I'll have to pay 50,000 rupees back. So if the project is viable, the bank would restructure the asset and downgrade it to non-performing asset and provision for the same. They'll restructure it, but they'll also have to downgrade it as non-performing asset. Because when I was not able to pay 1 lakh rupees, chances that I'll be able to pay 50,000 वो भी थोड़े कम होंगे, risk associated होगा. So bank will restructure the loan, but the loan will be considered NPA. And because the risk associated with loan has increased, bank will also have to keep some provisions that ये पैसा डूब सकता, this money could get wasted, this asset could completely be lost. So some extra provisioning has to be provided for. This is a normal circumstance without forbearance. This is something that has to happen. Fine. सबको समझ में आ रहा है? Why would this happen? In the situation when forbearance is there, in that case, restructured loan does not have to be considered NPA. Extra provision does not have to be provided. So banks will do what? Bank will restructure my loan. If they find that project is viable, if they find that Levelup IAS is viable, they will restructure the loan, and then they will not have to do anything else. The loan will not be considered NPA. The loan के लिए extra provisions would not be required. If the project is viable, the bank would restructure the asset. As restructured asset do not require the same level of provisioning as NPAs, inadequate provisions are made. So asset is restructured. It is not NPA. NPA is very bad situation. So the provisions that would be required would be lesser when compared to when the loan was declared NPA. So banks will have to keep less provisions separately in this situation. In the forbearance wala situation. Yash, you're able to understand this? Amit? Okay. Now, if the project is unviable, this was the situation when the project was viable. But suppose Vedanti also starts a class, Vedanti IAS classes. Unviable रहेगा, बेकार लड़के पढ़ाते वढ़ाना तो नहीं आता इसे. Project would be unviable. She takes a loan of 1 CR and starts teaching current affairs. बगल में, मेरे बगल में viable होगा क्या? नहीं होगा. In that situation, suppose she is not able to pay back her 1 lakh rupees per month back. In normal circumstances, without forbearance, if the project is unviable, she is not able to, it's her project, so it's unviable, the bank would not restructure the loan. loan will not be restructured for in this situation, and declare asset as non-performing. This asset becomes, crucially, banks do not gain by restructuring unviable project in this case. तो here unviable project को अगर बैंक ने restructure कर भी दिया होता तो बैंक का loss ही हो रहा होता, because chance that money would have come back would have been lesser. The bank will not take more risk. It will declare the asset to be non-performing asset and will start taking steps to recover as much as possible. After some time, it may go for insolvency and bankruptcy, जहां Vedanti IAS classes could be sold off completely. I'll buy chairs. Liquidation हो जाएगा. Getting my point? But why would they do this? Because the project is unviable and what? But when forbearance is there, in that situation, if bank declare this asset to be non-performing asset, they'll have to keep some more capital. But if the bank just restructures the loan, will it be considered non-performing asset? No. Forbearance में नहीं ना. तो यहाँ in case of non-forbearance situation, if a loan is restructured, it becomes NPA by default. But in case of forbearance, if the loan is restructured, it no more is NPA. So they'll restructure the loan so that it does not become an NPA and they do not have to keep capital. Extra capital that they have to keep there. और एक्स्ट्रा रिस्क, समझ गए ना, कोई भी चीज अगर एनपीए बनती है तो एसोसिएटेड मोर रिस्क, तो कैपिटल टू रिस्क वेटेड एसेट रेशियो में you'll have to increase the capital because risk weighted asset ratio वाला वो denominator has increased. You'll have to increase the capital. But in case of forbearance, restructured loan is not considered NPA, so they will, even if our project is unviable, they will restructure the loan. They'll say, oh, you are paying 1 lakh rupees per month, you pay 50,000 rupees per month for a longer duration. But in their books, they'll not have to worry about making it NPA and making extra provisions for that. Should banks do this if the project is unviable? No, they should not be doing it. If the project is unviable, you should declare NPA and try to recover as much money as possible. But still, in case of forbearance, they tend to do this. There are different reasons for it. In private sector banks, they would do this because CEO would not want to show that during my term, the bank was in loss. A lot of NPAs were created. Same is the case with public sector banks. There would be other reasons also, but in public sector banks also, if I'm heading a public sector bank, during my term, not a lot of NPAs were there. I would try to show this so that after my retirement, I can be on the board of a number of other banks. After the bankers retire, they go as independent directors or in other positions to other banks to work. They'll be able to get those opportunities only if at their time the performance of the bank was good. NPAs did not become very high. So in case of forbearance, even an unviable loan becomes not viable, becomes restructured. It is restructured so that it doesn't have to be shown as NPA and extra capital does not have to be provided for. And when it doesn't have to be shown as NPA, you do not have to provide extra capital. In that situation, profit that is coming could also be distributed to shareholders. So the promoters of the company also would want this. Do not show NPA. Show a lot of profit, give us profit. I invested 1 CR, but 50 lakh rupees I am able to get as profit. So in a way, literally my contribution is lesser. But will this loan be not problematic in future? Yes, this will be problematic. But understand from the perspective of bank owners, promoters, my contribution to capital is reducing because in the form of profit, I have taken out money. So even if bank fails tomorrow, because of her loan, which she'll not be able to return, and other such loans, which they have kept restructuring and restructuring. Who will be at loss? Promoters will not be at a lot of loss. The people who have deposited their money there, depositors, their money would be at risk. Because the promoters, the capital that they had added, वो profit के form में थोड़ा थोड़ा gain करते जा रहे हैं. But if they had not restructured her loan and declared it as NPA, then they would have had to add more capital. They would have had to add more provisions. So here they have shifted the risk from the promoters or owners of the bank to depositors. रवि उंगलियां चबा रहा है. Yes, इंसॉल्वेंसी एंड बैंक्रप्सी में अगर बैंक लॉस, बैंक डिस्ट्रॉय हो रहा है तो उन्हें पता है कि हमें वैसे भी कुछ नहीं मिलेगा, हमें आखिरी में मिलेगा. तो इसीलिए दैट्स व्हाई दे आर नॉट शोइंग कि वी आर एट लॉस. We are not at loss. We are not at loss. See, we are earning profit and we are taking profit. में तो shareholders will get the profit. No, I'm taking profit. Okay, understood this whole dimension. थोड़ा हम धीरे धीरे चल रहे हैं, but I hope समझ में आ रही हैं चीजें. Now everything would be simple. So when forbearance is not there, when normal circumstances are there, bank restructured the loan based on the viability. If the project is viable, bank will restructure the loan. If project is something that is expected to get profit in the future, bank will restructure the loan. If the project is unviable, bank will not restructure the loan. But in forbearance wala situation, but with forbearance, banks don't suffer any near-term cost for restructuring. Because restructuring के बाद loan will not be declared NPA. They will not have to add any extra capital. So in case of forbearance, banks don't suffer any near-term cost for restructuring. Therefore, banks prefer restructuring as this choice allows them to declare fewer NPAs. So in case of forbearance, banks will restructure the loan and avoid cost due to loan provisioning. जो extra risk होगा उसके लिए कुछ provisions डालने पड़ेंगे, वो तो promoters को डालने पड़ेंगे. That is also avoided when the loan is not declared NPA. Forbearance thus incentivizes banks to take risk by restructuring stressed asset even if they are unviable. Fine. Now, एक और चीज समझते हैं. The entities which are capital constraints, the banks which are capital constraint, जिनके पास कैपिटल की कमी है, जिनका जो कैपिटल टू रिस्क वेटेड एसेट रेशियो एग्जैक्टली 10 है, so that थोड़ा भी रिस्क बढ़ता है, they'll have to add more money because their capital is much lesser. Suppose in capital to risk weighted asset ratio is 10%. My capital is of 10 crore rupees, but the loan that I have given is only of 50 crore rupees. The loan that I have given is only of 50 crore rupees. So capital to risk weighted asset ratio right now is what? 20%? 50 crore ka 10 crore. So even if I declare some things as NPAs, I'll not have to add more capital for now because my capital is adequate. You're understanding this? Because my capital is adequate right now. But in situation when the entity is capital constrained, that is, right now my capital is, right now my capital is 10 CR, capital to risk weighted asset ratio is 10% and my risk weighted assets are 100 CR. So any increase in risk weight will lead to, I'll have to increase the capital. This is capital constrained bank. So in this situation, in these situations, especially when the bank is capital constrained, in periods of forbearance, वो restructure ही करते जाते हैं. They do not do NPA. They go for restructuring because the moment they declare something as NPA, what happens? Add more capital. They do not want to add more capital. They restructure the loan. हर प्रोजेक्ट इज रिस्की, डूबने वाला है, but still the project is unviable, they will restructure the loan, especially in capital constrained entity. जो capital rich entity है, they may not need to do this, but capital constrained, because capital rich entity also do not want to do this because the capital investment that they have made is good, high, and they would not want that 5 years down the line bank fails. But जो capital कम डाला है जिन्होंने, their risk involved is also less, so they do not want, they would want कि अभी जितना पैसा निकल जाए, 5 साल बाद बैंक डूबता भी कोई बात नहीं. Come back. Capital constrained entities are particularly susceptible to investing in risky projects, which is the phenomenon called risk shifting. So capital constrained banks will keep investing in this risky project. Why? It will keep restructuring her loan. Why? Because एक तो उनके पास capital नहीं है और लगाने के लिए, so if they declare it NPA, वो हो जाएगा, but their loss reduces. They'll not have to add more capital, they'll show profit and they'll take out some profit out of the bank. Their risk will shift to the depositors. Because if the bank fails 5 years down the line, it will be the depositors who will suffer, and that this is called risk shifting in academic literature. Yes, समझ में आ रहा है? नींद तो नहीं आ रही? So consider a bank which has a very large outstanding borrower, like Vijay Mallya. Vijay Mallya may be a very large outstanding borrower. If the borrower defaults, and the bank would have to recognize debt as NPA, bank will have to show that debt is NPA, they'll have to show some loss, they'll have to recapitalize their account. They may have to recapitalize if the capital is not enough. So this recognition as NPA impacts equity holders. Equity holders मतलब shareholders or owners of the bank. If they are recognizing loss, if they are recognizing NPA, then it is loss to equity holders. But so they would not do this. They would restructure the loan. They will not declare it as NPA. They will restructure the loan. और उस केस में depositors will be the ones who will be at loss. So depositors do not have any marginal upside in case of risky investment. Depositors को कोई फायदा नहीं है अगर इनके unviable project में भी बैंक इन्वेस्ट कर रहा है, but may incur some cost if it fails. Because of her unviable project, if the bank fails, they'll be at loss because their deposit money that they have deposited would be at risk. तो risk shifting में क्या हुआ? Risk from shareholders, equity holders shifted to depositors. Equity holders would want to do that because वो अपना फायदा सोच रहे होंगे, depositors का नहीं सोच रहे होंगे. तो capital constrained banks therefore choose to restructure even unviable projects when the opportunity arises under a forbearance regime, thereby shifting risk away from the equity holders to depositors and taxpayers. I'm saying taxpayer also because when it's a public sector bank, if the bank fails, government will capitalize the bank using taxpayers' money. Okay, and if it's a private sector bank, so equity holders will worry about their own profit rather than profit of shareholders. So why would government bank do the same thing? एक तो private bank में तो मैं अपना profit, equity holders would want their profit. Government banks would do it for personal career concerns. CEO would not want to show that during his regime loss was there in the company or NPAs were high in there in the company, so that उसका future में career अच्छा हो पाए. Or sometimes forbearance can be used as shield for corruption. How? Her loan is there. He is not able to pay back the loan. I could have declared that loan as NPA and start recovery process. He comes, यार 10 लाख रुपए रखो ना. He comes and bribes me, gives me 10 lakh rupees. I'll say, okay, I'll restructure your loan. Because in the forbearance regime, restructuring of the loan does not have to be declared as NPA. तो bribe लेके या nepotism के वजह से I could do this thing. So during forbearance, what is the problem? Unviable project restructuring may be problematic. This you have understood? Okay. Now, here we have explained, like in August 2008, the situation before August 2008, when a restructured loan, the Economic Survey of India से मैंने image लिया है, a restructured loan was considered NPA. Later, changes were made. Here you'll see the whole cycle. The forbearance stage started on 27th August 2008. In August only, a Lehman Brothers crisis had occurred. The global financial crisis had started. So here you'll see special regulatory treatments, forbearance announcement had happened. And after that, it continued till 1st of April 2015. Here, forbearance was ended. So in this whole process, a lot of loans were restructured. Banks were restructuring the loan to show that to show that we do not have a lot of NPA, both private sector banks and public sector banks. But all those loans were in unviable businesses like that of her. Now, unnecessary extension से क्या हुआ? देखो, forbearance should have been for a period when economy was not doing well. So by 2011, 2008 में forbearance had started. By 2011, economic growth had recovered, exports had recovered, bank credit had also picked up. बैंक से जितने लोग लोन ले रहे हैं वो भी had also picked up. So forbearance should have ended there. But here forbearance was unnecessarily extended. After global financial crisis, forbearance, which should have ended in 2011, it continued till 2015. So what are the negative impact of this forbearance? Till now, I have tried to make you understand the concepts, like the complexity behind the issue. Here, now we'll come to things which you will be able to write in your answers. Exam में question आता है, what are the negative impact of extending regulatory forbearance in banking sector for longer duration? The first is, it will lead to continuous restructuring of loan. It is also known as evergreening sometimes. Evergreening क्यों? आपने लोन दिया, the other person is not able to return the loan back. You will say, तुम थोड़ा और लोन ले लो and try to make your business viable. Because I do not want to declare the previous loan as NPA. I do not want to declare previous loan as NPA. Why do I not want to declare the loan as NPA? Because loan declared NPA, I'll have to create provisions and other such problems would be there. So I do not want to declare previous loans as NPA. So what is happening? Evergreening of loans are happening. Evergreening may keep on happening because of corruption, because of nepotism, because of other factors. But it's allowed because forbearance has allowed it. Forbearance has said that if you restructure the loan, then NPA doesn't have to be declared. So here you'll see share of restructured loan in 2008 of all the loans which were given by banks in India, 0.74% of the loans were restructured loans. जिनको restructure करने की जरूरत पड़ी थी. It increased to 6.94% in 2015. These many loans were restructured by 2015, clearly showing that in this period, 2008 to 2015 period, a lot of loans were restructured. Can you understand the gravity of the thing? Whereas NPA did not increase a lot. See, NPA only increased from 2.2% to 4.3%. The reason being, NPA declare करने के बजाय they were restructuring the loan. And because of forbearance regime, restructuring of the loan was not considered NPA. In forbearance, restructuring of the loan is not considered NPA. So because of this, NPA बहुत नहीं बढ़ा. You'll see share of restructured loan. It is decreasing. In 2011, forbearance should have ended, but it did not end. Economy had started doing well, and after this, forbearance should have ended. It did not end. Banks kept on misusing the forbearance provision and kept on restructuring a lot of loans. Forbearance was finally ended here, and loan restructuring decreased. Why? Because after ending regulatory forbearance, even if you restructure loan, it will be considered NPA. So there is no point of restructuring the loan now if it's going to be considered NPA. So you'll see restructuring of the loans is reducing. This is another figure that I've taken from Economic Survey of India only. Fine. समझ में आ रही है? देखो, unfortunately I'm covering Economic Survey of India before covering banking sector. If I had covered banking sector earlier, then I would not have to spend so much of time in explaining all these concepts. But I hope even without covering banking sectors, you're able to understand this. Then undercapitalization of bank is happening. How undercapitalization of bank? See, two things are there. Suppose my bank's capital was 1 CR. My loan was 10 CR. Capital adequacy ratio was 10%. यही है 1 CR capital, 10 CR loan. If some of this loan had become NPA, then I'll have to add more capital to keep capital adequacy ratio at 10%. But here I'm not declaring them NPA, thus not adding more capital. In reality, because this is NPA. The loan that I have given to her is NPA in reality, but it is not being declared as NPA, it is being restructured. So capital is lesser, undercapitalization is happening. Undercapitalization is also happening because abhi loan is not declared as NPA, bank is earning profit. From that profit, it will give some money to the shareholders rather than keeping that profit to increase the capital. So capital requirement actually was much higher than what was the capital during this period. If all those loans which were restructured were declared NPA, capital requirement would have been much higher than 1 CR. But by keeping the loan as restructured, we kept the thing to be, converting the loan to restructured loan. By not declaring NPA, we did not keep demanding increase in capital, and capital remained less, whereas the requirement of capital was high, and thus undercapitalization is happening. This was also said by PJ Naik committee way back in 2014. He had said in 2014, PJ Naik committee had said that because of forbearance, two issues are emerging. One, evergreening of loan is happening. Loan, rather than declaring it as NPA, you are giving more loan. Evergreening of loan. Second, undercapitalization of banks is happening. Without forbearance, the restructured loan would be classified as NPA and provisions would rise, tier 1 capital would fall. But this was not happening here. In the situation of forbearance, provisions की जरूरत नहीं है, कैपिटल को बढ़ाने की जरूरत नहीं है, तो कैपिटल फॉल नहीं हो रहा. टियर 1 कैपिटल फॉलिंग का मतलब क्या है? 10% नहीं रह पाना. If NPA increases, then the capital would not have remained 10%. It would have decreased. So in the absence of forbearance, tier 1 capital would have fallen. But that did not happen. So another consequence of unnecessary extending forbearance. Then lending to zombie firms. We have understood in a forbearance situation, I would lend to unviable fund. Zombie firms क्यों बोल रहे हैं? Our institute is zombie. It's already dead. It's competing with me in current affairs. And she is teaching. It's already dead. Business is not viable. On papers only you are taking loans and running the institution. And मैं मजाक में बता रहा हूं, but zombie का मतलब समझ में आया ना? Zombie organization is one organization which is alive on paper but is not profitable, is dead otherwise. So banks will, we had said undercapitalized bank, capital constrained banks tend to keep giving loans to these people. We had said this. So a lot of loans would go to these kind of businesses suffering problems. Then when she would be getting loan this easily, she would also keep investing in unviable things. She would hire some other teacher for teaching current affairs. वो भी unviable रहेगा, right? अब प्रियंका बोल रही है सर इतना भी मत चढ़ो, पर समझ में आ रहा है ना क्या बोलने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं? She would keep investing in random things. Okay, now let's go to weakening of another problem is, समझ में नहीं आया? पानी गिर रहा है, शॉक लग जाएगा. Okay. Weakening of corporate governance in borrowers benefiting from forbearance. This is another problem which emerges. So let us understand. Please note, पहले इस sentence को पूरा समझो. हम will explain. Weakening of corporate governance in borrowers. She is the borrower. In her institution, weakening of corporate governance would occur. So what is weakening of corporate governance? Let me explain. See, in an institution or in any other corporate organization, there are some owners, shareholders, right? They are directors of the institution. They are part of that board of governors of the institution. But institution is run by executive, CEO and other people associate. CEO may not be the owner of the institution. Please understand this. For example, look at Microsoft. Bill Gates has the largest percentage of share. 7-8% of the share is with Bill Gates. Who's the CEO? Satya Nadella is the CEO. He's running the organization, right? But he reports to whom? Shareholders, who are represented by board of directors. So real owners of the institution are this board of directors, and the CEO reports to them, and CEO runs the institution. They would decide, okay, the organization is not doing well, let's remove this CEO. So when we talk about corporate governance, it is what these people do. The policies that these people are making, the initiatives that these people are taking to ensure proper accountability in how the organization is being run. But in case suppose Vedanti is the CEO here, she's able, even if she has destroyed the institution, she is able to get loans from the bank easily. Her authority, her power would increase in the organization. The hold of directors would weaken. It would be difficult for directors to remove this individual. And that's why we are saying that weakening of corporate governance and borrowers benefiting from forbearance. And this has also been seen when generally in order to make board of directors more effective, please understand that in Indian scenario, for example, if we go to Reliance Industries, which is owned by Mukesh Ambani. Mukesh Ambani is running the organization, but he also is the owner of the organization. So he also is part of this director. 40% of the shares may, if Mukesh Ambani has 40% of the shares of Reliance Industries, if I do not know what exactly share is, so he represents 40% of the voting rights in this board of director wala framework bhi. But then in Reliance Industries, all of you have invested something through stock market. You are also owners. So you people are represented by independent directors. Independent directors. This director is also executive director. Why executive director? Because the executive may be involved. or promoter director. There are independent directors who represent other shareholders. छोटे जो shareholders हैं, government कई बार independent directors appoint कर देती है. In this way it works. So independent directors play a very important role to protect the rights of minority shareholders. Else Mukesh Ambani will keep doing things which are more beneficial for bigger shareholders and minority shareholders suffer. तो इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर्स होने चाहिए, विमेन डायरेक्टर होने चाहिए, ऐसे कुछ कंडीशंस हैं. It was seen that in case of forbearance, in entities which were borrowing, executive became more important, executive directors became more important, the corporate governance as such suffered. जो independent directors थे, they reduced. So according to SI, the percentage of non-promoters on the board, non-promoters मतलब people who do not directly own the institution, who may be representing other non-promoters on the board, decreased significantly after restructuring during the forbearance regime. When during forbearance regime restructuring happened, number of independent directors reduced. Whereas when restructuring was happening without forbearance, at that time number of independent directors were increasing, showing कि without forbearance अगर restructuring हुई मतलब executive is not able to function properly, corporate governance was able to play its role effectively. But during forbearance, when restructuring is happening, the loan is not declared NPA, the executive's hand is strong. He's saying, see, we do not have any problem. Our institution, our organization is running properly. So corporate governance in the sector also suffers. Then overall NPAs increase. There are some other impacts. For example, in 2015, when government ended our forbearance mechanism was ended by governor. At that time, what happened? Government realized that there are lots of loans which should be declared NPA, but banks have not declared them NPA. In 2015, when forbearance regime ended, regulatory forbearance ended, government or RBI had known that a lot of loans have not been declared NPA, but they are actually NPA. So they started what is known as asset quality review, AQR. The idea behind asset quality review was, जो भी banks के asset है, उनके quality को review करो to ensure that all the NPAs are identified. And therefore, from 2015-16, when the NPA percentage was 4.3%, to 2015-16, this NPA percentage increased to 7.3%. Why? Because a lot of loans which were not, a lot of assets which were not declared NPA were now declared NPA here. Fine? ये बात समझ में आई है? Okay. Later, you would see that NPA percentage peaked further. It became 11.2% in 2017-18 because asset quality review was also not able to identify all the distressed assets. It was because it was restricted to targeting bad lending only. That is, bank ने जो गलत तरीके से लोन दे दिए हैं उस पे. It was not looking at how bank using different mechanism was going for evergreening. She is not able to pay the older loan back. Give her some more loan so that she can pay the older loan back. So this loan will not become NPA and she has another loan. This was evergreening. So banks were doing this. RBI was not looking at this explicitly. So later, when this also had to end, because they cannot keep doing restructuring after forbearance regime has ended. After forbearance regime has ended, doing restructuring and doing these things were not feasible. The ratio increased to 11.1%. Fine. So AQR was not able to bring all the hidden bad assets because it was mostly targeting bad lending rather than identifying evergreening activities. So after 2015, banks were not going for restructuring. Please note, after 2015, will banks go for restructuring? No, because forbearance has ended. Restructuring will make it NPA. After 2015, what would they do? Evergreening or loan de do. That is what they were doing. Now, asset quality review, when it identified NPA to be 6-7%. Then it said, RBI said that banks may be requiring this much of capital. NPA increased. In 2014-15, NPA was around 4%. It increased to 6-7% after asset quality review in 2015-16. NPA increase मतलब capital की ज़्यादा ज़रूरत पड़ेगी. Asset quality review, because it was not able to identify all the NPAs, it was also underestimating the requirement of capital. Capital requirement was much higher, whereas under Project Indradhanush, government initially had planned capitalization worth 70,000 crore rupees. But eventually, because capital requirement was much higher, eventually, how much did government spend? Government by 2019 end had spent 2.5 lakh crore rupees. Asset quality review was not able to properly identify the recapitalization scenario. Fine. So here, because asset quality review was not able to identify all the NPAs, that evergreening thing kept on happening. NPA in reality kept on rising. Everyone, our banking sector kept on suffering. Then COVID-19 आ गया 2020 में. फिर से forbearance आ गया है. Restructuring of loans are happening. NPA percentage officially may not be going up, but when this forbearance regime ends, we will see that banking sector would be in a lot of distress. Not only this, when NPA increases, capital investment goes down. Understand this. When NPA increases, capital investment goes down. Why am I saying capital investment? Capital investment मतलब machinery में invest करना, land में invest करना, नए business में invest करना, it goes down. Why? Because one, when NPA increases, bank lending थोड़ा reduce कर देगा. Bank will reduce its lending a bit so that the honest borrowers है, for them getting loans would become difficult. But when bank is lending, it will mostly be lending to unviable entities. Why? Why would it be lending to unviable? Because it is their loan which they have to restructure. Otherwise, their loan will become NPA. Bank will be in problem. The bank tend to give in bad situations. Bank tend to give loan to bad people, and these bad people cannot properly invest in capital. The capital investment is suffering. Understand? मजा आ रहा है? Complications of the banking sector. So, what are the key learnings that we have? Now we are going through another forbearance regime. Based on the learning from 2008 forbearance regime, what are the key learnings? Based on our analysis of our study of 2008 forbearance regime, what are some things that should be kept in mind by RBI presently? First, forbearance should be treated as an emergency medicine and should not become a staple diet. इतने लंबे टाइम तक forbearance नहीं चला. In 2011 it should have ended. In the same way, after COVID-19, when the economy revives, when the banking sector revives, you end this forbearance regime then and there. Its need is there. Right now, during COVID crisis, banks cannot be as strict as earlier because businesses have suffered. But the forbearance should end the moment things improve. It should not become staple diet. It is an emergency measure. It's a medicine which is given when you are sick. But if you'll keep taking this medicine as a normal food thing, it would not be good for your health. Right? So when Amit was in class 12, Amit was given by his parents थोड़ा सा विस्की क्योंकि इसका गला खराब था. रम दिया था, विस्की दिया था, तो दवाई के फॉर्म में से दिया गया. बट फिर ये रेगुलरली लेता रहा ठीक होने के बाद भी. दिस इज हार्मफुल. फॉरबेरेंस इमरजेंसी मेजर है, दैट इज हार्मफुल. राइट? वेदांती अंदर से हंस रही, सर ये तो मेरे साथ भी हुआ था. ऐसा मैंने आज तक करती रही हूं. नहीं? ओके, देन इंटरनेशनल एक्सपीरियंस ऑल्सो शोज दिस. इंटरनेशनल एक्सपीरियंस सेज दैट अर्ली रिजॉल्वर्स जो थे, जिन्होंने फॉरबेरेंस रेजिम जल्दी खत्म कर दिया, their trend of NPAs you would see remained on the lower end. उनके एनपीएस बहुत ऊपर नहीं गए हैं। 2008 में भी ये इसी के आसपास थे, अभी भी ये 3, 4, 5, 2, 1 के आसपास है। बट जो बहुत दिनों तक forbearance regime, the countries which allowed forbearance regime to go for long, late resolvers, their NPA, see, in case of, where is India? India, it increased like this, right? Italy, Turkey, so they rose later. The forbearance regime should end. Then, when forbearance is withdrawn, asset quality review is important. So, though asset quality review led to certain problems because it was not able to identify all the non-performing assets and it did not estimate the capital properly, it led to its own problems. But we are saying that after forbearance regime ends, go for asset quality review. But that asset quality review should be exhaustive. It should be foolproof to ensure that कोई NPA बच ना जाए, to ensure that it gives right amount, it suggests right amount of capital that has to be provided. Then cleanup exercise should be accompanied by mandatory recapitalization. ये नहीं कि बस आपने NPA declare करके छोड़ दिया. Mandatory recapitalization. If it's a public sector bank, government will have to recapitalize. If it's private sector bank, the shareholders will have to recapitalize. Because without recapitalization, bank will not be able to function effectively. Then, legal infrastructure for recovery of loan also have to be taken care of. What is this legal infrastructure for recovery of loan? We have not covered it, but when people like her, when she take loan and is not giving it back in a timely manner, then loan provider can go to insolvency and bankruptcy board, can go to NCLT and say that this company is not giving loan on time, let us liquidate it. बेच दो. Or in case of individuals, you have to go to debt recovery tribunal. So here one suggestion is there that NCLT where the borrower तो ये है, the creditors can go, the DRT, debt recovery tribunal, where the creditor can go to recover the loan back, should also be strengthened. Right now there are a number of limitations associated with them that should also be taken care of. Okay, so these are certain learnings which are there. Any doubts here? Sure. Now you have understood this. If you want, you can read the chapter of Economic Survey of India also. It would not be needed. We have covered all the things which were relevant, but you'll be able to see a lot of graphs. See, ये ज़्यादा हो रहा है, ये कम हो रहा है. It's okay. Now the next chapter is very small, 10 minutes, not more than that. Let's cover it. Okay.